In July 2023, Ethan Myers, a self-made millionaire and celebrated tech entrepreneur, arrived in Atlanta for what was supposed to be a routine business trip. At 35, Ethan had everything: success, money, and influence. But his personal life? Empty. Nights were often spent alone, his wealth unable to fill the void. That night, while attending a networking event at one of Atlanta's most exclusive cocktail bars, Ethan noticed her. Vanessa. She was breathtaking. Long dark hair cascading over her shoulders, a radiant smile that lit up the room, and a presence that seemed to pull everyone in her orbit. Ethan, usually confident and composed, felt an unfamiliar nervousness as he approached her. "Hi, I'm Ethan," he said, extending a hand. She turned to him, her smile deepening, and replied, "Vanessa." They talked for hours, the noise of the bar fading as they lost themselves in conversation. She was witty, insightful, and full of life. Ethan, who had long resigned himself to the idea that women were more interested in his bank account than his personality, felt something he hadn't in years: genuine connection. What started as a chance meeting turned into something more. Ethan extended his stay in Atlanta, finding every excuse to spend time with Vanessa. They explored the city together: sunset walks through Piedmont Park, late-night dinners at hidden gems she introduced him to, and endless conversations about life and dreams. Vanessa was candid about her values. "I've always believed in saving myself for marriage," she said one evening, her tone serious. Ethan respected her deeply for it. To him, it was a sign of her integrity, a rare quality in the circles he was used to. Ethan fell hard, and he didn't hold back. Lavish dates, surprise gifts, and trips. He made sure Vanessa knew she was cherished. But what truly drew him to her wasn't the glamour. It was the way she made him feel grounded in a world that often felt superficial. 6 months later, on a private balcony overlooking the crystal-clear waters of the Bahamas, Ethan dropped to one knee. "Vanessa, you've changed my life in ways I never thought possible. Will you marry me?" Tears welled in her eyes as she whispered, "Yes." Their engagement was like a fairy tale, and Ethan thought he had found his happily ever after. Yet beneath Vanessa's smile was a secret she had carried for years, a truth she was terrified to reveal. As the wedding day approached, everything seemed perfect. Vanessa was radiant in her dress fittings, and Ethan was bursting with pride as he finalized their honeymoon plans. Friends and family gushed over the couple, calling their love story one for the ages. But secrets have a way of surfacing, and Vanessa's was no exception. While she convinced herself that her timing was justified, the truth loomed like a shadow over their perfect romance. Unbeknownst to Ethan, the foundation of their love was fragile, built on an illusion. As the wedding day drew closer, the cracks in their perfect beginning were ready to shatter everything. The wedding was nothing short of spectacular, a celebration fit for a millionaire and his stunning bride. Held at a five-star resort on the outskirts of Atlanta, the ceremony was a whirlwind of champagne fountains, string quartets, and thousands of white roses adorning every corner. Guests watched as Ethan and Vanessa exchanged vows under a canopy of twinkling lights. Whispers rippled through the crowd. "They're perfect together. He looks so happy. She's breathtaking." Ethan couldn't stop smiling, holding Vanessa's hands tightly, as if afraid to let go. To the outside world, this was a fairy tale. But inside, Vanessa's heart was pounding, not from joy but fear. Vanessa's smile never wavered as she danced with Ethan under the soft glow of chandeliers. But beneath her composure, her mind raced. She had promised herself she'd tell Ethan her truth tonight, but the weight of her decision crushed her. "What if he hates me?" she thought as they swayed to the music. "What if this ruins everything?" For months, Vanessa had rationalized her secrecy. She wanted Ethan to love her for who she was without any preconceptions. But now, standing at the precipice of their new life together, she realized there was no easy way out. After the last guest left, Ethan led Vanessa to the honeymoon suite. The room was opulent, rose petals scattered across the bed, a bottle of vintage champagne chilling in a silver bucket, the city lights twinkling through floor-to-ceiling windows. Ethan poured 2 glasses of champagne and handed one to Vanessa. "To us," he said, his eyes full of adoration. "To forever." Vanessa tried to smile, but her hands trembled. "Ethan," she said softly, setting her glass on the table. "Can we sit down? There's something I need to tell you." Ethan raised an eyebrow, his playful grin fading into concern. "Sure," he said, taking a seat on the edge of the bed. "What's on your mind?" Vanessa took a deep breath, her voice barely above a whisper. "Ethan, I love you more than anything. But before we move forward, you deserve to know something about me, about my past." Ethan's smile froze. He placed the champagne on the nightstand, leaning forward. "Okay," he said cautiously. "What is it?" Tears welled in Vanessa's eyes as she revealed her truth. "I'm transgender, Ethan. I transitioned years ago. I wanted to tell you, but I was so scared of losing you." For a moment, the room was silent, save for the hum of the air conditioner. Ethan stared at Vanessa, his expression unreadable. Then his champagne glass slipped from his hand, shattering on the floor. Ethan stood abruptly, his face pale. What are you saying?" he stammered. "You lied to me? You let me propose, marry you, and you didn't think I deserved to know?" Vanessa, tears streaming down her face, tried to explain. "I wanted to tell you so many times, but I was scared. I didn't know how you'd react, and I didn't want to lose you." Ethan's voice rose, his anger barely contained. "You didn't think I had the right to make that choice for myself? You decided for me." The dreamlike glow of their wedding day was gone, replaced by a suffocating tension. Ethan's mind reeled, struggling to process what he had just learned. He felt betrayed, blindsided, as if the life he had envisioned with Vanessa had been ripped away in an instant. As the night wore on, Ethan's emotions swirled. Love, betrayal, rage, all colliding in a storm that neither of them could escape. The illusion of perfection shattered, and the choices they made next would seal their fates. Ethan stood frozen, his mind struggling to reconcile the love he felt for Vanessa with the betrayal that now engulfed him. The perfect image of his life shattered in an instant, leaving only anger in its wake. "How could you do this to me?" Ethan roared, his voice echoing through the luxurious suite. His face was red, his hands clenched into fists. Vanessa, sitting on the edge of the bed, her face wet with tears, pleaded, "Ethan, please listen to me. I didn't mean to hurt you. I was so scared to lose you." Ethan's laugh was bitter, a sharp contrast to the love they'd shared mere hours before. "You didn't mean to hurt me? You lied to me. This entire marriage, everything I thought we had, was a lie." Vanessa tried to explain, her voice cracking under the weight of her emotions. "I love you, Ethan. I've always loved you. This doesn't change who I am." But Ethan wasn't listening. His mind was a whirlwind of betrayal, humiliation, and fury. As the argument intensified, Ethan's anger began to boil over. "You let me stand there in front of everyone, vowing my life to you, while hiding this," he bellowed, stepping closer. Vanessa backed away, her heart pounding. "I thought you loved me for who I am," she whispered. Ethan's response was a thunderous, "I don't even know who you are." His rage consumed him, and he lunged forward, grabbing Vanessa by the arms. He shook her, his grip tightening with every word. "Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you give me the choice?" he demanded, his face inches from hers. Vanessa struggled, her voice panicked. "Ethan, stop. You're hurting me." The room was chaos. Furniture toppled over as Vanessa tried to break free. Ethan's fury was unchecked, his emotions spiraling out of control. The screams and crashes didn't go unnoticed. In the neighboring suite, a couple looked at each other in alarm. "What's going on in there?" the man asked, heading toward the wall to listen. Vanessa's cries pierced through the silence of the night. "Stop, Ethan. Please stop." The neighbors banged on the door. "Hey, is everything okay in there?" When no response came, and the screaming continued, the couple called the hotel reception. Within minutes, hotel security arrived, followed closely by the police. The police burst into the suite to find Ethan standing over Vanessa, his face twisted with anger. Vanessa lay trembling on the floor, clutching her face, her left eye swollen shut. "Step back! Hands in the air!" one officer commanded, his hand on his holstered weapon. Ethan hesitated, his fury giving way to confusion. "She lied to me," he muttered, his voice shaking now. "She lied to me." The officers moved quickly, subduing him and placing him in handcuffs. Vanessa was helped to her feet, her body shaking from the ordeal. In that moment, the life they had built together, the love, the promises, the dreams, lay in ruins. Vanessa's secret, and Ethan's inability to handle it, had turned their once beautiful union into a nightmare. As Ethan was led away by the police, Vanessa was rushed to the hospital. But the scars, both physical and emotional, would linger long after that fateful night. And the choices they made from here would lead to a reckoning neither could escape. Vanessa lay in a hospital bed, her body battered and her spirit shaken. The bright fluorescent lights of the emergency room reflected the gravity of what she had endured. She had survived, but at a devastating cost. Doctors worked tirelessly to stabilize her. She had a fractured rib, severe bruising, and permanent damage to her left eye. As the nurse applied a bandage, Vanessa asked softly, "Will I ever see again?" The doctor's hesitation told her everything. "We're doing all we can," he said gently. Vanessa turned her face to the wall, her heart breaking not just for the loss of her vision, but for the life she thought she had with Ethan, a life now in ruins. Meanwhile, Ethan sat in a cold, gray holding cell. His earlier rage had dissolved, replaced by a gnawing regret. He replayed the events in his mind, the sound of Vanessa's cries haunting him. His lawyer arrived, dropping a stack of papers onto the metal table between them. "Ethan, do you have any idea what you've done?" Ethan ran his hands through his hair, his voice hollow. "She lied to me. She humiliated me." The lawyer leaned forward, his tone sharp. "That may be true, but you nearly killed her. You're looking at charges for attempted murder, assault, and domestic violence. You're in serious trouble." Ethan stared at the floor, the weight of his actions finally sinking in. Back at the hospital, Vanessa was surrounded by an outpouring of support. Her family flew in from out of town, their concern etched across their faces. Her sister held her hand tightly. "You're so strong, Vanessa. We'll get through this together." But it wasn't just family who rallied around her. Friends, community members, and even strangers reached out. Social media posts about her story went viral, sparking a wave of compassion and outrage. Despite her physical injuries, Vanessa made a decision. She wouldn't let Ethan's actions define her. She contacted a lawyer to press charges and ensure that justice was served. "He needs to face the consequences," she said, her voice firm despite the tears in her eyes. In jail, Ethan began to crumble. He was visited by his parents, who looked at him with a mix of disappointment and sorrow. "Son," his father said, his voice heavy, "what happened to you? You were always so level-headed." Ethan's response was a whisper. "I didn't know how to handle it. I snapped." His mother wiped away a tear. "That doesn't excuse what you did. Vanessa didn't deserve this." The tension mounted as the legal battle loomed. Ethan's wealthy status meant he could afford the best legal defense, but the evidence against him was damning. Witness testimonies, Vanessa's injuries, and his violent outburst that night. As Vanessa prepared to face Ethan in court, she knew this wasn't just about justice for herself. It was about reclaiming her life and sending a message that no one deserved to endure what she had. Meanwhile, Ethan wrestled with the harsh reality of his actions, knowing that his fate would soon be decided. The aftermath of their love story had turned into a battle for accountability, redemption, and survival. Both of their lives had changed forever, and the next chapter would be written in the courtroom. The trial of Ethan Myers became a national headline, a clash of betrayal, violence, and justice. The courtroom overflowed with reporters, activists, and curious onlookers, all eager to witness the downfall of a once-celebrated millionaire. Vanessa, wearing a patch over her damaged eye, entered the courtroom with quiet dignity. She was determined to tell her story, not as a victim, but as a survivor. The prosecution began their case by laying out the brutal facts of that fateful wedding night. This is not just a crime of passion, the prosecutor said firmly. It's an act of deliberate violence. When Vanessa took the stand, the room fell silent. Her voice was calm, but carried the weight of her ordeal. I trusted Ethan with my life, she said, glancing briefly at her estranged husband. I never meant to hurt him, but his reaction destroyed me, physically and emotionally. The defense attempted to rattle her, pressing on why she had waited so long to reveal her truth. Vanessa's answer was firm. Because I loved him. I thought he would see me for who I am, not what I was. Ethan's high-powered legal team argued that he acted in a state of temporary insanity. They painted a picture of a man blindsided by deception, whose emotional turmoil pushed him beyond reason. Imagine building a life with someone, only to find out on your wedding night that it was all based on a lie, his lawyer said, addressing the jury. But the prosecution was ready. They revealed evidence of Ethan's controlling tendencies. Text messages where he dictated Vanessa's every move, surveillance footage from the hotel showing his violent behavior even before the confrontation. The most damning testimony came from the neighbors who had heard the altercation. One neighbor, visibly shaken, recounted the desperate screams they heard that night. It wasn't just a fight, the neighbor said. It sounded like someone fighting for their life. As the trial wore on, Ethan took the stand in his defense. At first, he tried to remain composed, but under cross-examination, his emotions spilled over. I loved her, he said, his voice trembling. I thought she was everything I ever wanted, but she lied to me. She made me feel like a fool. The prosecutor seized the moment. So you felt justified in nearly killing her? Ethan's silence spoke volumes. For hours, the jury debated. The courtroom was tense, filled with hushed whispers and anxious glances. Vanessa sat quietly, holding her lawyer's hand, while Ethan stared at the floor, his confident demeanor now shattered. The verdict was announced, guilty on all charges. Ethan was sentenced to 15 years in prison for attempted murder and aggravated assault. As Ethan was led away in handcuffs, he turned to Vanessa one last time. I'm sorry, he whispered, but the words felt hollow against the weight of his actions. Vanessa, despite her pain, stood tall. She had faced her nightmare and survived. But the road ahead would still be long, as she worked to rebuild her life and her trust in others. Justice was served, but scars, both seen and unseen, would linger for years to come. And while Ethan would have plenty of time to reflect behind bars, Vanessa was determined to reclaim the life that had nearly been taken from her. Ethan Myers, once the poster child for success, now lived in the shadows of his choices. Sentenced to 15 years in prison, his luxurious lifestyle was replaced by a cold, unforgiving cell. The man who once commanded boardrooms now stared at gray walls, replaying the moment that destroyed his life. Prison life was unkind. Ethan, consumed by regret, spent hours writing letters he never sent, apologizing to Vanessa, to his family, to anyone who would listen. He joined anger management programs and therapy sessions, desperate to make sense of his rage and what it had cost him. Meanwhile, Vanessa emerged from the ashes of her trauma. Though she bore physical and emotional scars, she refused to let them define her. She began speaking at events, sharing her story to educate others about the transgender experience and the violence many face. Her resilience inspired countless people. In one heartfelt speech, Vanessa said, I never thought I'd survive that night, but I did. And I'm here to say that love starts with truth, not with hiding who you are, and certainly not with violence. Vanessa's work caught the attention of major organizations. She became a voice for those who felt unseen and unheard. Her once private pain transformed into a powerful message of hope. Her journey wasn't easy. She struggled with trust, with memories of the man she once loved, and with the haunting question of whether things could have ended differently. But each step she took was a victory. Years later, Vanessa sat down for a televised interview. Her poise was striking, her words measured but filled with emotion. "I made mistakes," she admitted. "I should have told Ethan sooner. But no one deserves what happened that night. Love should be built on honesty, not fear. And violence should never be an answer." The camera panned to her partially blind eye, a poignant reminder of the cost of that fateful night. In his cell, Ethan penned one final letter to Vanessa. This time he sent it. "I was wrong, Vanessa," the letter began. "I let my anger consume me, and I hurt the person I loved most. I hope you can find it in your heart to forgive me, even if I don't deserve it." Vanessa read the letter quietly. She didn't respond, but her tears weren't of anger. They were of closure. Life moved forward. Vanessa, now an advocate and public figure, built a life of purpose. Ethan remained behind bars, a cautionary tale of love turned to violence. This story isn't just about betrayal and rage. It's about the choices we make when confronted with pain and the resilience it takes to rise from its ashes. Vanessa's journey reminds us that even in our darkest moments, we can choose hope. Ethan's fall warns of the dangers of unchecked anger and the cost of ignoring our own humanity. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more real stories that inspire, educate, and remind us of the complexity of the human experience.